Okie dokie, here we are. I wanted to show you the new setup, and I've got quite a bit to show you. This is the new rig. You can see that the main thing that I've added is the Fanatec shifter here. And this is not the best position for it. I would like it to be a little bit more angled like this. But it's the best I can get it with what I have. And it works fine. I don't really use sequential very much anyway, except for like rallycross and some of the newer cars, like where they're just too fast to use an H pattern with. And some cars that have like 6 and 7 gears, you know, I might use a sequential for it or the paddle shifters. But for the most part, it's out of the way for the H pattern, which is what I use mostly. And it's enough in the way to where I can still reach it and, you know, utilize it in a practical manner. And if you got a really good eye, you'll notice under the seat there's something kind of poking out. And that's some old school technology. So I can connect everything to this and have access to, you know, switching things on and off from under my seat rather than, you know, if you remember the last video, I had to like reach over this whole unit just to plug in my wheel. So I got it to where it's all right there. And then also, if I take a step back, you'll notice that I have 1, 2, 3 lights. So let's get to the root of this video, and that is these two shifters. I have never had these two shifters in the same room at the same time. I ordered this one to replace this one because this one was broken. This has been gone for like about 2 months, and yesterday I just received it. So I mounted it up, and pretty much this is going to be a dedicated sequential shifter. I don't really plan on using it for H pattern ever again as my main, but it will be a nice backup if this one goes down for any reason. So I'm just going to sit right here, run through the gears, tell you what I think, and then we're going to play some games and tell you what I think in game. Here we go. First of all, let's switch this to H pattern mode. Where's the little switchy? Okay. I did do a modification to this, but it shouldn't matter at all in terms of its function, in terms of its ability to do H pattern mode. Typically, you'd have to use an Allen key on the side here, and you just tighten it to make the H pattern just feel tighter. It doesn't change the side-to-side movement at all, but it does change, you know, your ability to get into gear. Right now, it's set up to where I can switch from H pattern mode to sequential and have it work. Because if you actually tighten it down too much, it would stick. So you have to kind of find a middle ground, or, you know, adjust it anytime you switch from sequential to H pattern mode. So that's why I actually did the modification. I'll put the link in the description here. I can just do it by hand. I don't need to like search for my tools or whatever, or like fiddle around there, because they make the hole so small it's kind of hard to do if this is kind of like mounted in a way that, you know, something obscures it or something like that. You have to get an Allen key in there. It's a pain in the ass. So I just put this external screw basically that I can just adjust my thumb, and I can make it, you know, do whatever I want in terms of the tension from outside of the unit. So anyway, the sequential mode really has nothing to do with this comparison, but I just wanted to mention that I did make a modification. So that being said, let's get it to where these are roughly equal in terms of effort. Okay, so that feels about the same. Usually what I would do with both of these is map only 5 gears and then use the 6th position as reverse. And that's because that's how it is in my real car. And I mainly drive 5 speeds, or I'll drive a 6-speed and then set it up with longer gearing so I can reach a reasonable top speed in 5th gear rather than having to go to 6 for some reason. You know, first thoughts when I'm running through it, it feels good. This being roughly half the price of the Simvertex is definitely in its favor, because this feels good enough. This would be for someone that definitely wants extra immersion, you know, because typically, you know, paddle shifters are good enough for a manual transmission, and you can play almost any car in any game with paddle shifters and not have to worry about it. But then you know, most games don't require a clutch. But if you're the type of person that wants an H pattern to replicate a real car, or to just, like I said, to immerse yourself, like you know, if you like driving older cars, or if you like driving newer cars with older transmissions, you know, this is a great addition. You know, this does have the feature where you can push down, and then that's 7th gear, and that would be reverse. So, and like I said, you can map whatever you want. You can map that to reverse or 7th gear if you want, but it gives you a lot of options in terms of the type of car you want to drive. You know, you're not limited to just 5 speeds or just 6 speeds. The sound is definitely much quieter, you know, than this bad boy. I mean, it depends on how you mount it too, like, and where you mount it in terms of how loud it is. But overall, this is a quieter shifter, it just in general. So the cool thing about the Simvertex is you'll see these 3 posts here. Each one of these is independent of each other. So this middle one, I can adjust how difficult it is to get into gear for 3rd and 4th. The first one over here is actually for the 5 and 6 gear, or 5 in reverse, depending on your car of choice. And this one over here is for 1st and 2nd. So I actually have the plate off. There's typically a black plate that goes over the side of this, and I have it off, as you can see, just so you can kind of see the internals. It makes the videos a little bit more interesting to look at. It's a showpiece. You know, it's a standout part of your rig. Even though this doesn't really match anything on my rig, you know, the white is in contrast to the black. The silver doesn't really go with anything but maybe the brushed aluminum stuff over here, or the sides of this. But really, it stands out on its own, and it should. It's something that puts a smile on my face anytime I think about it. You know, like let me try it out. Yeah, see, it works. Anyway, this has the benefit, if you're running Fanatec wheelbase, it'll tell me what gear I'm in on my display on the wheel itself. Most Fanatec wheels have like a little mini display, and you know, it'll tell you what gear you're in. So if you're not in VR and you're running a single screen or a triple screen or whatever, you can actually, you know, look down and either confirm that your shifter is working properly, or, you know, like, just you can glance down and you can tell what gear you're in. It is integrated with each other, you know, like they work together. Same for, you know, if you were to switch it into sequential, you'll see that the H pattern mode disappears, and depending on what game you're playing, you'll actually see your gears changing on the wheel itself, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. So in terms of this unit, you have to basically set up and configure completely separate from your Fanatec gear, and you won't be able to use this shifter, for instance, unless you have some kind of weird conversion hardware. You can't use this on console. You can use this on console as long as you have a Fanatec wheelbase. So this unit right here comes with 2 different length rods. The Fanatec shifter comes with 2 different knobs, and this one actually kind of extends for sequential use. It extends the rod, so to speak. So you kind of can adjust the length of this by using the different knobs. But this one actually has just straight up 2 different rods. I'm using the short one right now. The long one is about that long. So, you know, if you like driving like classic cars and you want a little bit of a longer throw, that's another way you can adjust this. You can adjust the throw. You can obviously change the knob. This is made out of sort of like a plastic material. It makes it to where you can get more resistance because there's less mass up top without being as hard on the actual rod itself. But I think it would be a little bit more satisfying of a shift if there was a steel or an aluminum knob, just something a little bit weightier. But honestly, that's not really a complaint, that's more of a preference. And the knob that comes with this, the round one, feels great. I actually like it a lot. The only thing I don't like about it is those little rubber rings that look kind of tacky. But functionality wise, those little rubber rings help you grip the knob better. So now, in terms of the technology inside of these units, this one's a lot more simple, but this one is more robust in a lot of ways. This is using Hall sensors, so it's just like magnets, you know, floating around in there. You know, when you go into 3rd, the way that this detects it is a magnet will either be in a certain place or it'll be out of a certain place. Depending on the combination of where the magnets are, That's how it's able to tell what gear you're in. So that's a technology that will be lifelong. So the circuit board or the rod itself, like the shifting rod, would break before those magnets ever wear out. It's just magnets last a lot longer than anything that makes physical contact with each other. This is using micro switches. I'll include the link to the disassembly of this Simvertex shifter in the description below, so make sure and check that out. But a couple people mentioned like that's going to be the downfall of this unit is the micro switches, which are super solidly soldered on there. Like the solder work is great, and the components that they used are, in my opinion, top notch. I believe it will be very easy to desolder them or unsolder them, whatever the word is, and pop a new one on there. I really do. That being said, it is an inferior technology, being that there are more parts touching. A micro switch, from what I know, it is a magnetic switch. Like when you click it, you hear that little click. That's like a magnet coming together and breaking apart to break the connection. From what I know, they are both magnets, but this one is actually making a physical contact with the slider that makes the magnets come together and break apart. So that is a point of failure. In terms of how these both feel, the Fanatec shifter it feels like you're just pushing past something. Like you're pushing past, how can I explain it? I don't know if you've ever played with these as a kid, but there were these little rubber half circles, and you'd pop them, inside out, and then you place it on a table, and then it'll go pop, and then, the energy would kind of like spring upwards, and pop it into the air. That's kind of what this feels like. It feels like it's just like this. You can feel the rods moving back and forth. Like if I were just close my eyes, like it feels like the shifter rod is moving back and forth, right? But you can feel something sliding back and forth. And that sort of mechanical feel, it can't really be replicated with just a ball detent. And that's all that's inside of this, making it to where there's any kind of resistance, besides the spring, of course. But yeah, it's just the ball and it's just the detent that you're working past. You could say this feels like a manual transmission, and this kind of feels like the sensation you'd get from like an automatic shifting, from reverse to first or something like that, in terms of the feeling of the shift, right? Like not the actual motion, because this is an H pattern shifter, but in terms of like the actual satisfaction you get from the physical putting the rod into the place you want, like into the place you want, like into the place you want. Like you can just hear the difference. Like that's a mechanical unit. I mean, these are both mechanical devices. I mean, in the way that you're interacting with it, you're moving it around to get it to do what you want, but this just feels a lot more mechanical. I will say the round knob that this comes with does increase the mechanical feel. I like this shifter, I really do, and that's why I kept it. Originally I was going to sell it when I got it back, but then I realized I can use it as a sequential shifter. It still has a practical use in my rig. Now I have 3 different shifting methods. I want to replicate like a modern race car, I'll go with sequential or paddle shifters. If I want to replicate older cars or my own car, I'll go with this. Like I have options. If you were to ask me if these units were both the same exact price, if you were to ask me what I would rather keep, I would rather keep the Simvertex shifter. Even though it has less functionality, you know, it doesn't have a sequential mode. But even though this doesn't have a sequential mode, I would much rather have this shifter than this one, regardless of price. Now you're looking at about $650 to $700 for the shifter, and I'm not trying to talk you out of it. This stuff is very expensive, and you know, depending on what your uses for these objects are, it's not worth it to most people. You know, I'm using this to not only get better at racing and driving in general, but I'm using it obviously for entertainment. I gladly would buy this again in place of one of these. That's just what it is. So I know this video is kind of all over the place, but I'm really just kind of freeballing this. I want to give you my honest opinion and my honest reaction to these two units. Before we get into the gameplay section, I'm just going to be doing it on the screen. I don't need the VR because I'm just going to be kind of messing around. But if you have one of these, don't feel bad for owning it and you know, feeling like you need one of these. If you have this one and it works and you're satisfied with it, that's great. But honestly, I wouldn't have bought this shifter if this one didn't break on me. I was happy with this. You know, obviously I was eyeballing the Pro Sim, I was eyeballing the Frex, you know, a few other shifters, but it really wasn't something that I was seriously considering until, you know, this unit broke and I had to get something else. I was using the paddle shifters for a while, and the paddle shifters feel great, but I do mostly rally racing where there's a lot more wheel rotation than like F1, where you just kind of like, you know, doing this and not really ever letting go of the wheel. So the paddle shifters just weren't cutting it for me. So yeah, so I was sort of forced to have to research a new shifter with intent to buy. I would highly recommend buying it in its current state. I'm not saying don't buy it now, but you know, if you're hesitant at all about purchasing this and there's maybe one or two things you don't like about it for whatever reason, that second version is coming out. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel to see that in March. I think I've kind of talked about my reasoning and everything enough, and the actual units and how they feel compared to each other. So let's get into a game here. I am having a little bit of difficulty talking. If you've noticed, my mouth is like super dry. Probably because I'm dehydrated. I'm just going to do a little bit of gameplay with the Simvertex first, and then we're going to switch over to the Fanatec. It's kind of odd that this Richard Burns rally game takes even like more than 2 seconds to load, considering it's from like 2004. But
3, 2, 1.
Okay, I'm not going to be driving to do well here. I'm just kind of like giving you an idea of what, you know, what to expect from a shifter. When you use a shifter, it just feels natural. It doesn't feel like it's trying to emulate something. It feels like it should. It just feels like a mechanical object that's shifting your gears. Okay. Hopefully you don't think this is how I actually drive when I'm actually trying to be serious. I just busted my hand open. You get an idea. Like, I'm not gonna like put like a ton of footage of, you know, you can watch any one of my newer videos and I'm using this shifter, and you can watch any one of my older videos and I'm using this shifter. So I'm glad the unit features 8 different gears you can utilize, but I rarely ever use that.
Three, two, one. Here. By right long into the crest, or right long 30. 3 left narrow 100.
Oh shit.
2 right long 100.
I mean, it doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel as natural. Like the motion feels natural. I think it crashed in the same spot. Like the motion feels natural, like rowing through the gears. It's not like ambiguous in terms of where you're going with the gears. Like, it feels solid. It just doesn't feel like you're moving anything. It literally feels like the end of that rod is just floating in there. I mean, it is connected to a gate, right? The gate makes it to where this rod doesn't go certain areas. Like, it's interacting with something in there. It's touching something, but it just more or less feels like this rod goes straight into the unit, and that's all it's doing. It's like it doesn't have any weight. Maybe that's a good way to put it. Like, the only thing to resist your movement is literally that ball in the spring. Like, with this, you can feel the mass moving back and forth. Like, you still have that initial, that little bump that you're having to kind of like move through that ball and spring, because it's the same device in here. But you can feel it sliding back and forth, and you can feel the weight of it. Like, if I go back and forth kind of quick, let's say like I unscrewed this all the way and there was no spring or no clicky feeling, I'd still be able to feel something moving around, and I'd be able to feel the weight still. And these rods, I mean, they don't weigh like a ton, but they're solid steel rods. I think that's the biggest difference. If all you're looking for is just to be able to replicate an H pattern in terms of the motions, get the muscle memory, this will serve its purpose fine. Like, you don't need a way more expensive thing. You really don't. But in terms of like the sort of top quality stuff, I think these are in like a different tier. I would consider this a middle tier unit, and this to be a top tier unit.
Left, open, 30. Water splash, 3 right, narrow, slow 30, 5 right, into the crest.
How is that a 3 right? That's like a 2 or a 1.
Splash, into 3
So we're just gonna go with the
narrow,
slow.
30.
Look at that. That's like almost a 90-degree turn. How is that a 3? I'm a better driver than what I'm showing off. The car's in good enough condition where I can just keep this going here.
Left, 100.
Yeah, it's night and day difference. What do you say?
Left, into
Oh, I think he said like a 1. Playing the games that I typically play, like rally games and stuff, like, I'd have no reason to ever go back to this shifter. This is worth the extra money, in my opinion. This is still a great shifter. Don't get me wrong. And if you have this, like I said, and you own it, be proud of it. It's a great shifter. And it's amazing how far we've come to where you can have this stuff in your own home, and you don't have to go to like some other place to get this experience. You can have this experience at home for a reasonable amount of money. It's still a lot. It's attainable. If you save up your money and put it towards this stuff, you can have this stuff too. So we need more of these. We need more options. And Simvertex, welcome to the H pattern market. And for a first entry, and I believe this is your first entry. I don't know if maybe in China you release something else, but from what I know, this is their first sim racing product, and they did a great job. And can it be improved? Yes. But everything can be improved, and I'm just glad that they're here and they're in the market. I'm glad for Fanatec too, even though it's like a love-hate relationship with them. Like, they fucked me over so many times, and I've given them so much of my money, but has it been worth it for the level of fun I've had in these past 5 or 6 months, or however long it's been? Yes, it has. And on that note, have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.